2011 Town of Wareham Board of Selectmen Sewer Commission meeting. Before we start, I'll make our usual announcement. I am requesting that all cell phones and electronic devices be turned off or in a mute position as not to disturb the meeting. Any member of the public also has a right to make an audio or video recording of an open session of a public meeting. A member of the public who wishes to record a meeting must first notify the chair and must comply with reasonable requirements regarding audio or video equipment established by the chair so as not to interfere with the meeting. The chair is required to inform other attendees of such recording at the beginning of the meeting. And we do have one reporter that is recording today. Mr. Clerk, roll call, please.
All 5 selectmen are still present, as is the town administrator.
Are there any announcements?
We have some announcements. This Saturday and Sunday, October 8th and 9th, from 10 in the morning until 4 p.m. will be the 8th annual Cranberry Harvest Celebration out at Tyhonet Road, otherwise known as Makepeace. This year, as in years past, there'll be cranberry harvest going on all day, helicopter rides, pony rides, games for the kids. Great, great, great food by many of our local restaurants and vendors. Harpoon Brewery will have some sample cups. The admission is $5 for adults, $3 for senior citizens. Children under the age of 7 are admitted free. Again, that's this weekend, our annual Cranberry Festival. On Sunday, October the 16th, the Wareham Fire Department will host an open house from 11:30 to 3 p.m. at the Main Street Fire Station. Families are invited to learn about fire safety prevention and participate in safety activities. The event is free to attend, and to top it off, Papagino's pizza will be served. Again, that's on Sunday, October 16th, Main Street Fire Station, 11:30 to 3 p.m. The Gleason Family, YMCA, is holding its 3rd annual wine tasting event on Friday, October 14th, at the Marion Music Hall. As you know, that the scholarship provides for programs that area residents and folks are unable to pay for and can't afford to pay the tuition for these events at the YMCA. And the mission for the YMCA is that no one gets turned away. So there's a wine tasting event again. That's on October the 14th from 6 to 9 p.m. There will be a silent auction as well, and that is at the Marion Music Hall. The Wareham Garden Club will meet on Thursday, October 13th at 9:30 a.m. at the First Congressional Church Fellowship Hall on Gibbs Avenue. The club will be presenting information about drying gourds for use in projects and a program on bedding down gardens for the fall season. Guests are welcome to attend the meeting at no charge. Again, that's put on by our garden club, October the 13th, from 9:30 to 2 p.m. On Friday, November the 11th, we will have our annual Wareham Veterans Day Parade. I see Mr. White is here this evening. Mr. White, good evening. Bob has graciously stepped up to the plate as we ask for volunteers. This year's parade will assemble at 10 a.m., step off at 10:30 a.m. Bob and his team, Sharon Boyer and John Wagner, are looking for community groups that would like to march in the parade. Also, post-parade is a fine event, a light potluck luncheon for veterans and parade participants to be held in this building, the Multi-Service Center. Again, please contact Bob White, Sharon Boyer, or John Wagner. Any member of the Board of Selectmen, Town Hall, we can all get you the information that you need to contact the right people. On Wednesday, October the 5th, which is tomorrow, by the way, from 8 to 9:30 a.m. at the TD Bank Building at 231 Main Street, there will be a informational meeting on the construction of the streetscape improvement along Main Street in Wareham Village, which will begin on October 2011. You know that this program and the changes being made to Main Street in Wareham have been worked on for quite some time now. We've heard a lot about it through our Community Economic Development Authority, CEDA. It's getting very exciting that this project is about ready to begin. That's 8 o'clock tomorrow morning through 9:30. And on the agenda, they'll be talking about the construction schedule, any temporary detours and traffic rerouting that will take place during this project, and access to local businesses during that construction. So we'll have people there from the general contractor, engineers, the CEDAR office. So please come if you have any interest in any of that. I believe that today, if I'm not mistaken, was the last day to register to vote. Today, right? Yes. So I think Marianne was open until 8 o'clock, so you have about 48 minutes to register to vote. If you want to participate in our town meeting, and Mr. Chairman, our final announcement, I think, is that town meeting will be held at the Wareham High School auditorium beginning on Monday night, October the 24th, which is coming up in about 2.5 weeks, at 7 p.m. You're now planning to try to get there about 6:30, 6:45, so you have to check in to register to get your tickets, just as you would go into a polling place to vote. I think that empties my folder. Is there anyone else? Mrs. Winslow? Mr. Schneider? Mrs. Begley? That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Citizen
Mr.
participation.
Chair.
I have 3. We'll start in the front. 4.
Good evening. I'm anyone I haven't.
You want to
Can you
identify
hear me?
yourself?
Hi, I'm Matt Pillsbury. Wanted to ask if the board intends to discuss or read into the record the report from the Office of the Inspector General that clears the good name of my mother, the late Mary Jane Pillsbury.
Yeah, I think we just received this, and it'll probably be on one of our agendas coming up, probably next week.
Okay, so it will be next week then? I can.
Well, that's where we're looking at the agenda now. We're going to discuss it, and it'll probably be on next week.
Okay, I just, while I'm here, I just want to state I do feel it's important that it be discussed publicly, read into the record, because, as you know, she served on this board for 15 years. She was a town employee, worked for the library 35 years, 25 years as library director. As anyone knows, if you've ever lost someone that you love, that's a very painful experience. But it's 1,000 times more painful when her death and her inability to defend herself is used for vicious and untrue, false smears to be put out there on her reputation. So false statements were made about her, false statements were made about our library, and I really feel
excuse me, I
that
don't want
needs
to
to
cut
be
you
made
off, but
public.
we do have the report, and if you're going to do your report now, no use doing our report, but we will do our report, and we will exonerate whatever was on the report.
Okay, well, thank you. I'll be back next week then.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Town Administrator, make sure we have that on there. Okay, thank you very much. The one right behind, the second one.
What are you doing, Carl? What are you doing?
Yeah,
Carl?
hey,
Under the
what's
table?
what's happening? I think someone wasn't here earlier then, right? Or they just didn't pay us any, or they just didn't pay us any mind. What's going on?
He's getting his handicap updated.
I got a problem. I didn't know this was in my pocket. Seriously.
Oh, yeah, okay. Sounds good.
I'm trying to turn it off.
Now that everybody knows you, now you made a Grand
Good
entrance.
afternoon. My name is Ron Robinson, Precinct 4. I noticed on the agenda for this evening that one of the items that is of importance to me and the Oakdale residents is the authorization for change orders. Now, as you probably know, there are plenty of residents in Oakdale who are very much concerned about the sewer project and its costs. There's been all kinds of rumors and innuendos concerning the cost of the project and how the costs are escalating. They keep going up and up. So one of our concerns has to be trying to get a hold of the escalating costs, and namely that has to do with change orders. I would just hope that in the past, in the future, that the selectmen or sewer commissioners, whoever it may be, are taking a hard look at these change orders and somehow validating the line items in the orders. I know I'm a little bit late in terms of dealing with some of the orders that are in the past. I did have a chance to review some of them. Some of the line items didn't make much sense to me. I was at a previous meeting when I heard one of the representatives from, I guess it was CDM, mentioned extensions. We're also concerned about project extensions, and the word was that the project had to be extended because of unforeseen circumstances, and that the dollar amount had to go up because of circumstances beyond their control. And all I'm saying is that I'm hoping that someone is watching the hen house, because we don't have the ability to do that. And I thought that we elected officials to not only look out for the well-being of the town, but to also look out for the well-being of the individuals. And that directly relates to the cost that we're going to pay in terms of betterments. So when these change orders come in, I hope that we're just not signing them and approving them as a matter of procedure, but that someone is looking at them in a way that they can be able to tell whether or not these change orders are needed and whether they're relevant or not. So that's basically, go ahead, please.
Okay, all change orders are processed prior to this. When it comes before us on the board, it's already been approved prior to this, and all we're doing is okaying the money. We've already been through all these. We do have meetings for sewer commissions, and like you said, you wanted to be informed. On Wednesdays, twice a month, we have meetings and see what's going on in contract. The contract, too, it includes Oakdale, but it may be a change order on another part of the contract, like Comissit. Later on in the meeting, we will have CDM, Mike Judici, up in front of us, and he can explain it more. But most of these were already approved because of changes in the contract or changes in pump stations or changes that need to be done to make the project continue on.
Right.
And with the change orders, with any change orders, usually there's a time extension.
Yeah.
Mr. Holmes, you have something? I see you raising your hand.
I'm sorry, I was
Mrs. Winslow?
motioning to Mr. White.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Robinson, I'm always concerned with change orders because I realize that it increases the cost, and every increase is an increase to the end user. This particular change order that's on tonight's agenda was actually discussed about over a year ago, the moving of the 3 pump stations, and the prior board had a lengthy discussion about the cost associated with that. There were 3 pump stations that were located, I believe that they were on private property, and the I'd have to go back to watch the tape, but if memory serves me, the actual cost mitigation, is that what it's called, or whatever the word is, was not going to be substantially less than the cost of just moving them and making the homeowners happy. And in fact, I'd have to look back at the tape and see what Mr. Judici said, but I do believe this change order came in a little lower than what was predicted for the movement of these three, a little,
Yeah.
not much. But I just want you to be aware that when Mr. Chair says that these things have already been discussed, and the conversation may have taken place quite some time ago, and you're finally seeing the actual cost come before the board.
Right, and if I just may, that's the essence of my conversation, is that these change orders were submitted some time ago. They've taken place, the discussions has passed. Now it's sort of just like a rubber stamp. You're just stamping the payment, the approval of the payment. And what I'm saying is that I understand there was discussions before. What I don't know is how much scrutiny was provided in terms of the actual change order line items. And I'm saying that I don't have the expertise to do that. I don't know if CDM is responsible for doing that on behalf of the residents of Wareham. But I'm just saying that it needs to be done. And from what I've seen, some of the items didn't make much sense to me, but I'm not an expert. I'm not going to get into that. But all I'm saying is that it just needs to be scrutinized a little bit so that the costs are more reasonable, and there are not any costs in there that shouldn't be there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. In the back, to the right.
Hi, I'm here to make a presentation for the Wareham Historical Society. Wareham Historical Society is going to have a program on October 15th, 2011. It's a Saturday evening. It will be called Haunted History Night, and we are hosting Spooky South Coast. They're going to be doing paranormal tour through the Fearing Tavern, the schoolhouse, the Methodist Meeting House, and the little chapel at 495 Main Street in Wareham. The hours will be from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. Anyone requiring or looking for further information should go to the website spookysouthcoast.com. The price for tickets for this event will be $99 per person. That will include the lectures, book signings, dinner prepared by the Spooky Crew at the Mill Pond Diner, located next to Fearing Tavern. You'll be investigating through these historic buildings, and a portion of the ticket sale will go towards the Wareham Historical Society to maintain the 5 buildings that we are stewards for. And I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, right.
Good evening, Sandy Slavin. I had a couple points, and one, I wanted to ask the sewer commissioners if they could, by detail, give us the incremental cost of moving those 3 pump stations in Project 2. I know there's more cost associated in engineering, utilities, CDM oversight, et cetera, et cetera. I've inherited 2 properties in this project, and I really would like to know the cost of what each of us will bear, because we accommodated some people to move the pump stations. So that's just
I think that's all forthcoming, so,
by pump station, the cost.
okay.
Okay, 'cause-
Mr. Judy is coming up next. If he has them, we won't. If not, we'll get
well,
them. I
that's
can-
just not the change orders, all the other stuff that has come forward on it. So if I could get that, I would appreciate it. Because then I can divide it by the number of people, so I know what each one of us cost to accommodate a moving of a pump station, because they didn't like it where it was. Number 2, last week while I was here, I asked for the documentation on appointments and reappointments. After speaking to Mr. Holmes this afternoon, I went searching for minutes of September 11th, 2010. I could not find them online, but I called the Board of Selectmen's office, and it was forwarded to me. So I now have the minutes of that, but not the guidelines. The digital recording piece, yes, I got the official notice in the mail, and I have a question regarding that. Who's the records custodian going to be of these tapes?
I think it'll be in the selectman's office. It'll be one of the Okay, Mr. Town Administrator will be.
So it won't be the clerk?
It'll be in his office, so it'll be.
No, it won't be the town clerk.
Yeah, once it goes to us, it'll be through the town clerk.
Sorry.
Correct.
The tape will go to the town clerk?
It'll come to us first, and then it'll go to
And
the
then
town.
there, okay. There is something called a records management unit in the state of Massachusetts in which we need approval for the appropriate retention schedule. Do you know if that's been done?
No, I don't.
Okay. So the state hasn't approved our retention schedule, right? Now, next thing will be quick. We now have an opening on the Affordable Housing Trust. One of our members resigned today, so I'm just letting everybody know that they can put in an application for the Affordable Housing Trust. The last thing I wanted to talk about was access to town council. Recently received an email from Mr. Andrews regarding the access to town council. Attached with it was a policy dated 8822. I want to read from 8822 because I believe there's a disconnect between the email we received from Mr. Andrews, and I need to know how to address this to my committees. It reads, in the event, request for the opinion or use of services of town council shall first be initiated by a vote of a majority of a town board, committee, commission, or by a department head. That tells me, one, the committee must by majority vote approve to address the town council. The chairman of that board, committee, commission, or department head shall then forward such a request to the town administrator, together with the reasons for the request. If the town administrator agrees that the request is appropriate and proper, she will carry the request forward in writing to the town council. That tells me that only Mr. Andrews can take requests directly to the council, nobody else, if I'm reading this correct. If the town administrator agrees that the request is appropriate, he or she will carry the request forward in writing. The email we have from Mr. Andrews says, please be advised that access to town council and legal services must be cleared through Walter B. Cruz, Senior Chairman of the Board of Selectmen, or the town administrator. In policy 8822, only the town administrator is mentioned, and only he can contact the council by forwarding our request from the board, or committee, or commission. And yet the email note says, once we have approval from Mr. Cruz or Mr. Andrews, we can go directly to council ourselves. Did I misunderstand?
No, I don't think you misunderstand. In fact, you quoted it exactly. If you want to stick by that, then just go to Mr. Andrews and don't have to worry about Mr. Cruz. How's that?
But I want to make sure that this is true for every
For
board,
every board,
committee, and commission, including the Board of Selectmen.
He's the town administrator. Day to day is his. Now, he put down to see both. If you want to do one, go directly to Mr. Andrews, and that'll alleviate all the other questions you have. Thank you. Any other questions?
I just want to make sure that this is for every board, committee, and commission.
Thank you.
Okay. I think
Anything
that
from
does
the
it.
board? On your committees?
First of all, there is a conflict there that Mrs. Slavin has, and boards. Now, when I say boards, I want to clarify what I refer to. I refer to boards that are appointed by this board, where we are the appointing authority. I don't care if they have a vote of a majority. They have no business going to the town administrator. They don't report to the town administrator. They should be calling you or sending you a note as the chairman of the board, notifying this body who they report to and work for that they want town council. And then it's up to us, through you, Mr. Chair, to go to Mr. Andrews. They shouldn't be going to Mr. Andrews or any town administrator circumventing this Board of Selectmen. Those boards are appointed by us. So if you go by Mrs. Slavin's quote in that 88, and we may need to update that policy, any board or commission that we appoint can have a vote and go seek counsel without ever notifying the board that appointed them. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, if you want,
right?
It makes sense the way you're saying it right now, but I'll tell you, If
In
you want to change it,
1988, it didn't
right.
make sense, right?
In 88.2, that's the way it was. If you see it needs to be a change, then what you can do is draft a policy up, like we did a couple weeks ago, and we can go for it.
That makes
But right
sense.
now, it says for them to go to the town administrator. So for right now, they'll go to the town administrator. Mrs. Begley?
This is policy 88-2, and I believe that Mrs. Slavin did quote it, but not in its entirety. This says all written opinions of town council will also be filed with selectmen and the town clerk, except in matters involving litigation or prospective litigation, which also shall be marked confidential. All requests for the initiation of defense of litigation shall require the approval of the Board of Selectmen or the chairman of the Board of Selectmen in those instances which require expedient action by the town. This policy shall not conflict with those town officers entrusted to uphold and enforce the Massachusetts general law. And that, of course, is health agent, police department, dog officer, or building inspector. The first part of this is request for the opinion or use of services of town council shall first be initiated by a vote of the majority of the town board, committee, commission, or by a department head. The chairman of that board, committee, commission, or department head shall then forward such request to the town administrator together with the reasons for the request. If the town administrator agrees to the request, it is appropriate and proper, he or she will carry the request forward in writing to town council. In the event that the town administrator should disagree with the request, he will place in writing the reasons to the board, committee, commission, or department head and to the Board of Selectmen. If any board, committee, commission, or department head so wishes to appeal the decision of the town administrator, they may also do so with the Board of Selectmen. So the town administrator isn't the end-all, be-all for
But he is the
consulting
starting
with...
point.
Mhm.
He is the starting point. Okay. Yes, I didn't read the whole thing because at the time I was only concerned about the first paragraph, slightly conflicting with an email I had received earlier. That was all. I just wanted clarification.
So, Mr. Chair, if I might just follow up on Mrs. Begley. Mrs. Begley, on that, what you just read, so that a board of commission appointed, the way 88 reads, right? So board of that we have appointed can go to Mr. Andrews for legal counsel. Mr. Andrews could okey-dokey it, and off it goes to legal counsel. And we wouldn't hear about it until town council was ready to litigate, or close to that end. And what I'm saying is, in 2011, we appoint these commissions or boards, and I think they should come to us, or at least include the chairperson in the copy
I
of that
have no
vote.
problem. I'm just
No, I
trying to
understand
follow
you.
it.
I wasn't talking to you. I was talking to the board for a second. And that's all I'm saying, is that maybe we just need to look at that, because it does conflict with the email that went out that says, Mr. Cruz, or... Now, what happens to boards, if I might, what happens to the boards that we don't appoint, like FinCom and those that are
Planning
appointed
board,
by other
Capital.
authorities?
And I think there's one more.
Sorry?
Capital
I think
planning,
there's
planning,
3 or 4, right?
Yeah, there's about 4 of them.
FinCom.
FinCom, planning,
They fall under
capital.
this?
No,
under
no,
this
I don't
guideline?
think so, no. No, they don't.
What about the director of the town administrator? Do they fall under that one? They don't fall under our policy, but they fall under that memo?
TA,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
if I may.
Mr. Snyder?
Well, I appreciate the question and the attempt at clarification on some of these issues. You mentioned, Mrs. Slavin, that you're here on behalf as a chairperson of a number of committees. How many committees is that?
I'm on several committees. I'm chair of 2 committees, and I'm here for clarification so I can talk directly to my 2 committees regarding this.
Okay. So I'm just curious. There's been no vote of the committees to come before the Board of Selectmen in relation to this issue.
No, if that was the case, I would have asked for appointment, I would have asked for time on the agenda for that particular committee.
Okay. I
I'm just
understand.
trying to clarify some information.
I understand your attempt at clarification. I think it's something that certainly warrants a discussion, but I just wonder if we're, during citizens' participation, going a little bit beyond the scope of what we should be.
Thank you. Mrs. Begley?
This board certainly can revisit this policy. That's our purview, that we're a policy-making entity for the town of Wareham. So perhaps something like this could be placed, it's 88-2. access to town council. Perhaps this can go on an upcoming agenda for discussion and possibly reviewing this policy.
But, okay, that sounds good, but until then, we'll abide by what we have written on that. And thank you.
Thank you.
I think there was one on the left-hand side, and this will be the last citizen participation.
Good evening. Jennifer Peterson, West Wareham. I just had 3 questions. I don't know if they may be more for Mr. Andrews than they are for the board, but you can decide. Thank you. The first question is regarding the upcoming town meeting, in that I know it's not the meeting in which we decide or vote on the budget, but there are monetary items in which we will be making decisions regarding appropriations. So are we going to, as the body of the town, going to receive information regarding the budget as it stands now? And if so, will that budget be in a transparent format, thus layman's terms, so that people know, 1, where we are in reference to the projected revenue and the actual revenue we've taken in thus far, as well as our projected expenditures and where we are actually with expenditures, especially in light of the issue that all those issues that came up with the hurricane. And then thirdly, with the meals tax projected revenue, have we received any appropriations yet from the state? And if so, what was the percentage to what was projected?
Mr. Chairman, through you, 98% collected for the first month of what we had projected on the meals tax. Approximately $46,000 taken in. And that gets to the original question, which is that there are no budgetary items on the warrant. Some items have impact going forward that will be in the 2013 spending plan that I will submit, that will be used with respect to the meals and motels tax and how we fit the capital items into that. So that's pretty much where things stand. The annual town meeting is in April. The budget that I will submit in December, on December 15th, I believe the charter calls for it, will have all of those elements in it. So we are running according to schedule with regards to the meals and motels tax at 98%. By the way, certified, collected by the Mass Department of Revenue. I don't know if people really understand how it works, but it gets sent into Boston and gets calculated at that point. So I hope that answers your questions going forward. The capital items that are on the list are on a debt service schedule that will be in my fiscal 2013 budget. We're looking for a review, discussion, and approval going forward to get those capital items beginning on July 1st next year. Hope that helps.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Next up is Mike Judici. Yeah, thanks very much. While you're at it, you may be able to answer a lot of these questions that were brought before us earlier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mike Judici from CDM. If I may, I just go through a quick status report on where we stand with Contract 2, and then we can get into a discussion of the proposed change order if that's desired. In terms of Contract 2, obviously the work to be completed has to do with the pumping stations. On the bullet list I gave you, essentially the first 4 sort of repeats from the last time I appeared. I just wanted to keep them on there to let you know what had previously been accomplished. Since that time, the generators and electrical cabinets have been installed at all 4 stations. Gas connections to the generators, the 3 generators at the 3 stations, has been completed. The pumps and the controls for those pumps have been installed. The walkways associated with each of the stations have been installed, as well as a little parking area at the Avenue A station. All the grading and loaming and seeding has been completed at the 3 stations. As we had discussed previously, one of the long lead time items and issues of concern had been coordination with NSTAR, providing power to the stations. They had some poles that needed to be set at 3 of the stations. Those have been completed at Cremisa, Mattapoisett, and Apple Street. Those stations are all installed, as well as electric meters at 2 of the stations, Avenue A and Mattapoisett. Going forward, in terms of what needs to be completed, the meters at Apple and Cremisa still have not been installed by NSTAR. As of earlier this week, NSTAR is scheduled to install the meter at the Apple Street station this Thursday. We're trying to work with them to get them to piggyback the Cremisa meter for that same day, but have not been successful to this point. Hopefully that will follow shortly thereafter. The final connections to the pumps to each of the control panels are in progress. Apple Street was completed today. Load bank testing of each of the generators is in process. The Avenue A generator was completed today, and that went successfully. Cremisa and Mattapoisett are scheduled for tomorrow. And hopefully those will be completed as well. So if everything goes according to schedule, and again, the one unknown is the NSTAR meter to be installed at the Cremisa station, we're hopefully going to be starting up testing and starting the training for each of the 4 pumping stations next week. Beyond that, the only other item to be completed at each of the stations that really doesn't have to do with the operation of the stations is the paving and the roadways adjacent to each of the stations. That paving had not been completed as part of the rest of the paving for the projects. So that's to be scheduled over the next several weeks as well. And then once the stations are started up, we'll develop a punch list for the pumping stations to iron out any issues that need to be resolved at each of the stations. As a side note, just want to call to your attention, we discussed at the last progress meeting, we have received word that EPA is going to come in and do what they call a document verification site visit, essentially an audit associated with the stimulus funding that was received for Contracts 1 and Contract 2. Standard matter, of course. A lot of the projects that we're dealing with are going through these audits as we speak. We had a pre-audit review with DEP back in June, just as they came in to give us sort of a look at what EPA would be looking at, and they found all our records to be in good order, so we don't suspect that there will be any issues with this audit coming up. I just wanted to make you aware of that. That's scheduled for October 26th at the site trailer.
Any question for the board? Mr. Begley?
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. I don't know if it's an appropriate time, and I see that Guy's here. I missed the last progress meeting, and I'm just wondering if there was a question about a SIM card because there was some issues for testing, and I guess some of the pump stations were switching off or were turned off or whatever, and I'm just wondering if that was resolved. Yes. Short answer. Yes. Good.
I believe it has been.
Thank you.
Mr. Campino would know more.
Mr. Holmes?
Has been.
Oh, sorry. Wait, hold up.
I just want to let the listening audience realize that CDM has been trying to get NSTAR to install that pole at, was it Apple Street or Avenue A, for over a year. Is that correct?
It's been quite a while. I don't know the exact dates, and
So,
there are several of them that needed to be installed.
Right,
The
but
Avenue
that's,
A was not
so
one.
that's all set. That's
Poles have been installed.
They've been installed.
At this point, we're waiting for meters at 2 of the stations, Cremisa and Apple.
So that's the only delay, because there was also a delay with the cabinet. I mean, there were several issues that prevented from moving forward, but
Correct.
it looks like the majority of the work has been
Things are
completed.
starting to fall in place over the last month. So, as I said, if we can get the meters installed at the two stations, we should be able to start them up next week. Obviously, hurricane/tropical storm Irene had some role in this, and that, NSTAR had bigger issues for several weeks following that to deal with, so that we were obviously a lower priority. But since that time, they have at least installed the poles and pulled the wires and brought the power to each of the stations. It's just a question of getting the meters in, because until the meters are in, you can't start the stations up.
I understand. Thank you.
And I just want to clarify on Mrs. Bagley's comment. She said it took a year, but I think we personally, from the town administrator's office, we call NSTAR, and within a week, the pole was up and electric was to it. So I just want to clarify that statement. So
Mr. Chairman, if I could...
just put a feather in our cap.
Yes, we appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman, if I could... No,
Mr. Holmes.
oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, Mike, on this change order that we have in front of us tonight, the extension of that change order only takes us through October 15th. Is there going to be an issue? Today's the 4th, and we're not done
It's essentially the end of next
with
week.
those three pump stations.
I don't think it's an issue, Mr. Holmes. I mean, at this point, it's really just a contractual paper exercise in terms of the contract the town has with the contractor. He's obviously going to finish the work, and whether it's by the 15th or
Nobody's going
the
to come
following
back
week.
after the 15th and ask for more money, correct?
Not for more money to maybe straighten out the paperwork. They may ask for an official extension of time, a no-cost change order, just to get the time frame lined up with the actual completion date. I'm not sure if that will happen or not. Sometimes it does.
I have no issue with that. I just want to make sure that there's no more money involved, because this does say the one we're about to approve, or maybe if the board so votes, will run us through the 15th. It's 11 days away.
That's correct. But in terms of the extension of time itself, even that extension through the 15th did not have a cost associated with it. The cost was associated
Right.
with the extra work that they were doing during that extended time associated with the pumping stations.
Got it. Thanks, Mike.
Mr. Andrews, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say for not only Mr. Judici, but also for the board and listening audience, that particularly as it relates to the poles and connections, Chairman Cruz was outstanding in that process, drove it home. We got very close to the people that were putting the work orders in to drive the rest of the project home, and he deserves a lot of credit. People should know that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Snyder?
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. Actually, I think Mr. Holmes actually covered some of the questions I had, but I also did want to ask, someone came up earlier and asked whether there was a breakdown for moving the individual pump stations. Is that something that you have readily available that you could provide to us?
I can sort of give you an order of magnitude in terms of the costs as they relate to the change order that's before you. As Mrs. Slavin had indicated, there are other costs, town costs, legal costs perhaps associated with the easement takings that I'm not privy to at this point. In terms of this change order for moving the three pumping stations, the total you have in front of you is 150. I'm sorry, I changed that. It's I don't have the total. The $155,432 does include a second item that we can discuss in a moment as well, for just under $6,000. So it's roughly $149,000. Again, in rough numbers, for the three pumping stations that were relocated, for Avenue A, it's roughly $43,000. Cromesit was roughly $74,000, and Mattapoisett around $33,000. And that should come up to somewhere around $149,000. Again, there were other ancillary costs associated with that. There were, our extension of contract for overseeing that construction. There were other town costs as well that, as I said, I don't have before me, and those generally wouldn't be broken out by each of the pumping stations.
I understand. And also, I certainly take the initiative to look at the change orders as they come in, but would you mind explaining what the actual process is that CDM undertakes with respect to reviewing change orders.
Absolutely. And if I may, just for clarification, on this contract, this is change order number 2. So change order number 1 was associated with water work that was done by the sewer contractor through the town's contract on behalf of the Wareham Fire District. That was a pass-through change order that the sewer users and the town bear no cost of. That the Wareham Fire District was reimbursing the town for the total cost of that change order. It was a procedural issue to be able to use the contractor that was on site doing the work in those areas for that work. So there was no cost to the sewer contract associated with change order number 1. So there's only been one, well, not yet because you haven't voted on it, so there's only one change order associated with this contract. The vast majority of it, as I said, $149,000 thereabouts, is associated with moving the 3 pumping stations. There is another item for $6,000 for a water main that needed to be repaired during construction. So just to clarify the number and amount of the change orders. So in terms of the process, whenever an item comes up, and whether it's this pumping station change or in the case of the water main is maybe a better example, that's something that as the contractor's installing the sewer, he comes across a damaged water main that's leaking and that actually failed in the sewer trench. So he made that repair to a defective pipe and continued on his way. He submits his costs to us for review. We are obviously on site when most of the stuff is happening, so we're able to document the amount of time they spend and the materials that they use on these particular issues. We obviously check to make sure they coincide with our records and agree with our records. If needed, we sit down with the contractor and negotiate what we think is a more fair cost for the town based on our observations of the work. That's certainly the process that happened with the 3 pumping station sites. There's been a lot of correspondence back and forth and submittal and resubmittal of costs and negotiations with the contractor to make sure that the town gets a fair price for the work that was done. That's one of the reasons you hired us to be on site to watch the work and to represent the town in your best interests in this project. So that was the process that went on. All the costs were vetted. That was one of the reasons why it took so long to get this package in front of you, is because there was a back and forth going on for a period of time.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Giudice, I believe that I asked the question in a previous meeting specifically related to the water pipe installations, but I'm not sure if I asked you the question if the town received some sort of credit on these projects as a result of us opening the ground for the water department to do their the installation of the water pipe. Is that question clear?
Let me try to answer it, and you can tell me if I answered your question. Any costs associated with installing the water main were included in that change order that was to be reimbursed by the fire district, so that any costs that weren't related to sewer installation that were associated with that water main were to be reimbursed.
Okay, so let me rephrase the question.
Okay, I'm sorry.
The question is, if the town, as part of its sewer project, is opening the ground to install the sewer pipe, and are we just charging the water department the cost of installation of the pipe, or are we also charging them a percentage of the costs associated with opening the ground, excavation, re-excavation, and repaving of the streets?
Now I understand your question a little more. Separate operations. The sewer is put in first as one operation, then they come back on the same street with a separate crew and a separate time and a separate operation to install the water facilities. So there's no common excavation. In some cases that could happen. You'd put 2 pipes in one trench. That's not what happened here. The sewer went in one trench. They came in later, or in fact, in some areas, they may have done the water work first. I stand corrected because they needed to move the water main out of the way of the sewer. So that happened under one operation, then they came back in later and put the sewer under a separate excavation process.
Thank you.
Mrs. Winslow?
I have an easy one for you
I
tonight.
hope.
You know that I don't like change orders, but my question on this one is, and somebody may have asked it, I was over there, did the 8-inch water main that broke, is that a fire district responsibility?
In this case, it wouldn't be, and this isn't something that's unusual. This is, an older water system that, at least in this area, wasn't installed properly, perhaps, because as it describes in the change order, there was no restraint for the pipe, and by that I mean anytime you have a bend in a pipe, you typically have some sort of restraint, either a piece concrete thrust block, because there are pressures that develop and forces that are involved with the water traveling through a water pipe. So you either put special joints on those fittings to hold the pipe together, or you put an exterior thrust block to keep the pipes intact. And that was absent in this particular location.
So who installed the water pipe?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Wasn't the town.
I assume it was not the town. That's correct.
So, Mr. Chair, I mean, I know that we're talking about small change here, but, I think this needs to be looked at in terms of who. I don't think this is the responsibility of the ratepayer, the sewer, the betterment people. I don't think that's, and I know you're going to say it's only pennies, but that's not the point. It's pennies on this one, and it's pennies on the next one. It's a water pipe. Mr. Judici is saying that the water pipe was not installed correctly and it broke, and that fee should be the responsibility of the water department. If it had broke at any other time, it wouldn't be the town's responsibility to pay it.
I think the first one was responsibility of the water department, because they were going to change the pipe.
The first one, but within
Change order number one, yeah. I'm sorry.
within this change order, there's $5,990.89 for the repair the broken 8-inch AC water main on Avenue A between sewer manholes 22A and 22B. And then it goes on to talk about how the area was isolated for the removal of the pipe and the installation of the new pipe and fittings with the proper restraints and connection of the new DI pipe section to the existing 8-inch water main. After completion of the work, the trench was backfilled, the area cleaned up, and so on. So the reason for this is because during excavation of the new 8-inch gravity sewer on Avenue A, a short section of the existing 8-inch AC water main was exposed. When they examined this section of the pipe, it revealed a leak in the cast iron fitting. Well, that leak in the and I appreciate the fact that the contractor notices this stuff, don't get me wrong. However, the fact that the water main was leaking is not the responsibility of the town, and it certainly isn't the responsibility of the folks who are going to pay the betterment.
Mr. Chair.
Should I answer that, or you want to answer?
Just a comment. I mean, it's a fair observation. What I would propose to you is it's also not the responsibility of the contractor. So this change order is the contractor asking to be paid for work that he did that was out of scope. So I think for the purposes of this change order, it's appropriate that it be included. If there's a separate discussion or negotiation with the water district in terms of reimbursing the town for that money, I think that's certainly valid. But in terms of the contractor getting paid for the work he did, I think it's appropriate for it to be in the change order. But just my opinion.
Mr. Judici, I completely respect your opinion. However, the contractor certainly could have picked up the phone and called Mr. Martin at the Wareham Water District and advised him of this. Did he do that?
They may have. I don't know the answer. I don't know the
but
specifics of that.
I
but
guess
they
what
may
I'm
have.
saying is that please don't sit before me and expect that because the contractor performed some work and didn't clear that, did he clear it through you? Did you clear it through the town administrator? I mean, we're talking about what really amounts to chump change on a, multi-million-dollar contract. However, next time it may not be. And I think it's great that he noticed it, and I think it's great that he repaired it, but certainly to just go ahead and make repairs that are outside the scope of the contract and really not the responsibility of the town, and then for you to sit there and tell me that we should just go ahead and pay it and fight our battle with the water district is really unfair to this board and the folks that fall on this contract.
I appreciate and respect your comments. My understanding is that this was literally a water main that was pouring into his trench, so he, I'm sure, called the water department. I can't tell you specifically that they did and what that conversation was, whether they were cleared to make the repairs, but the repair needed to be made. Otherwise, the whole trench would have collapsed and it would have caused more damage to the area. But I understand and agree with what you said.
Mr. Snyder?
Mr. Chairman, through you, Mr. Judici, I agree with Mrs. Winslow that a conversation is appropriate to have with the Water Department with respect to this change order and trying to gain some reimbursement for that. But I do think that you're correct that the contractor does deserve to be paid as part of the contract. And I do have a question, though, with respect to what is the amount that you typically carry in your budget for unforeseen costs? Because I'm a little bit concerned that if we're receiving change orders for things of this nature, that there might be other situations that we've run into similar to this that we should also be looking at having a conversation with other other entities or whomever regarding similar situations.
Yeah, in terms of I think where it would have the impact is obviously on the betterments. And in terms of the estimated betterment calculations that were put forth by the town, there was a 5% construction contingency, I believe, carried in that estimate. So there's about a $4.5 or $5 million project. I can't remember the project total. So it's the order of magnitude that was carried for construction contingencies. In terms of other issues, as I indicated, what you have before you tonight are all the issues up to this point. I will caveat that, as we discussed at the meeting a couple of weeks ago, there are two other issues that have surfaced in the last several weeks that are, in aggregate less than $10,000 that are still being discussed and negotiated with the contractor. So there will be one subsequent change order potentially for those issues, but beyond that, this is it. So there aren't other issues.
Okay, and as part of your contract, you're charged with negotiating these change orders.
That's correct.
And seeking. Okay,
That's
thank
correct.
you.
Mr. Holmes?
Wow. Well, then that surprises me a little bit, Mike, based on your answer to Mr. Schneider's question. If you're the one who negotiated, I was going to make a motion to take the bill and just put it off for a week, take that money out of there and charge it to Mike Martin or the Wareham District. But you actually negotiated this into the cost of the project. Is that
No.
what I just heard you tell Mr. Schneider?
In terms of the water main repair,
Yeah. But you negotiated this money into this change fee. He just asked you if you negotiated the change fees, and you said yes.
as a matter of course, certainly, yeah. As I said, with the pumping station in particular,
I understand Judici has to get paid.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure he has to be paid out of the sewer project if it's not related to the sewer project.
certainly. No, and it's a
Which is
valid
one of
point. As
Mr. Robinson's questions earlier is are we really scrutinizing this thing? I know it's only $6,000, but if it should have been charged to the Wareham Water District, why is it in the change fee?
Well, the simple answer is that's the vehicle for GEOSO to get paid, similar to the first change order that was water work. The town is under contract with GEOSO to do this work. The water district is not. So this, at least in my mind, has some similarities to that situation.
But to answer that, Mike, at that time when we had the change order, I believe was at zero, or we had invoiced the water district for that money. Did somebody send an invoice to the water district for the $6,000?
I don't know the answer to that question. No, I agree.
That's not apples to apples. If
Yep.
we saw the first invoice, and I don't see this one, so. I mean, if we have, fine. Then it's the same thing. As long as that money's deducted out of the total when we calculate their user fees.
Absolutely.
Right.
No, I understand. It's a valid
Mr.
question.
Begley?
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. Hi, Mike, how are you?
Good thing.
To clarify, what you're saying here is that GIOSO had a contract with the town, so I think I'm hearing you recommend that this board pay this bill and then send an invoice to the Wareham Water District to be reimbursed for this $5,990.89. Is that kind of the direction?
I would need some more specifics on this. My focus has been on the pumping stations, and I apologize. I know I'd be the right person to be talking to you about the specifics of this incident. As you said, it's not a lot of money, but I realize it's a lot of money when it's added on to a lot of money. So I think it's a fair question that needs to be looked into.
And
I don't know the specifics, I apologize, of what was discussed with the fire district at the time.
Right, and I understand what you were saying, that GIOSO didn't have a contract with the Wareham Water District. I think Mr. Schneider kind of asked this question. Were there any other events like this during this project, to your knowledge, that they discovered a broken water main, or was it these contracts that the water district was going to come alongside and replace some areas of water mains? Is that correct?
And they did, and that was the subject of change order number 1
Right.
that we discussed previously.
Right, I remember that. So we've settled with the Wareham Water District, took care of that part of those monies.
As far as I know, once it leaves the change order realm, I'm not sure what happens between.
I'd like to see.
As of right now, I don't know if the water district did pay us the money or not, or they're holding it back. They're in the process.
So they're in the process of that.
That's
So
the
we
change
have
order.
invoices that went to the Wareham Water District to reimburse. We've already paid these bills, correct?
Yes.
So we need to be reimbursed. And those bills that were paid have already been deducted from, so that shouldn't add. So if we had, say, $80,000, say it accumulated into $60,000 just for a figure, that would not be part of the betterment that these homeowners would be incurring. Is that correct?
No, there may have been other incidents, but none that led to additional costs through a change order, with the exception of change order number 1, which was the larger
Correct.
replacement. This kind of thing happens all the time. If it's an hour here, an hour there, typically the contractor takes care of it, or the district will come out. I know on previous contracts, and I can't speak to this one in particular, I know specifically down on the Briarwood Beach contract, there were quite a number of water main issues because of the age of the pipe and the depth of the sewer and the materials, that the district was out there working side by side with the contractor, making some repairs, and/or directing the contractor to make repairs and then reimbursing the town. My sense is that has not happened on either of these contracts, with the exception of this item.
Thank you very much. Now,
Mrs. Winslow?
I'm sorry, this would be to the town administrator. Mr. Andrews, can this board see some documentation of the invoices that went to the water district and see what the status is of reimbursement for the town of Wareham?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, certainly, and by the way, to Mr. Schneider's point earlier, it doesn't make sense to open the street up twice if the water system is being replaced as well. So this was a negotiated in advance agreement. We'll get that information out to the entire board. And anybody else that'd like to look at it. And by the way, to Mr. Schneider's point, it was mocked up to include the paving, the engineering, the administrative costs, everything that went with it was included in the overall cost of this. So that would be deducted from any amount that would, to your point, Selectwoman Begley, from any cost that would ultimately hit the ratepayer. You're welcome.
Change it.
Mr. Winslow?
Oh, well, Mr. Chair, I was going to make a motion to pay the change order at less the $5,990.89 so that we have a chance to find out what happened and get Mike Martin on the horn, so to speak, and find out, are they paying it? What's going to happen with this? What phone calls took place? Because I don't think that we should hold up the whole bill. I mean, that's really not fair to the contractor. And I do believe that we can put this amount on next week's agenda and address it then when we have all the facts.
You want to hold up on your motion, and Mr. Holmes is...
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on Mrs. Begley's point. Change order number 1 was 0. So that would not add to anything. But if we approve change order number 2, then you take that, right, then you take this 155, 432, 36 and divide that by the rate users, and that goes on to their betterment fee. But the first change order was $0, so it added nothing to the contract or to their fees, $0. But if you approve this, it is going to put that 155 out there.
Any more discussions on this? If not, there was a motion.
I think that was more than Mike wanted to talk about, but it kind of covered our center. You would have been called back.
That's why I'm
Even
here.
if you
No,
were in
and
your
it's,
car,
it's
right,
a fair
on
point.
95,
And
we would have called you back.
we can resubmit if you want to make the vote tonight. We can resubmit the paperwork to reflect what you voted, or if it gets resolved by next week, then you already have this.
There's
Mr.
a meeting
Snyder?
tomorrow, right?
Yes.
Yes,
You going?
right. We meet
8
at the
o'clock.
trailer at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Are you going?
Any interested party? I'm always
Martha's
there.
always there.
If everybody else was there, we wouldn't be having this long, drawn-out conversation. But anyway, Mr. Snyder?
Mr. Chairman, I just have one more comment, actually. Mr. Giudice, CDM is charged with negotiating these change orders on our behalf, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I don't think that it's the town administrator who should be providing us with the documentation. I think it should be Mr. Giudice with respect to the change orders. Mr. Town Administrator, is that your...
Mr. Chairman, through you to Selectman Snyder, I'll work with Mike to make certain that we get absolutely clear as to what the final costs are, and to make certain that all the documentation is there. Is that fair to say, Mike?
Absolutely. If I could just point out, in terms of change order number 1, that was the water work, we had no role in that work. That was designed and engineered by the fire district or their consultants, overseen by them. We had no role in the oversight or design of that change order.
I understand that, but to Mrs. Winslow's point, there was a unforeseen condition that added to the bottom line cost
Sure.
of this project, which CDM should have advocated on behalf of the taxpayers of the town of Wareham,
Certainly.
and it wasn't done. And I guess what I'm saying to you, Mr. Town Administrator, is any documentation related to that should come through CDM, because that's what we're paying them to do.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Winslow.
I mean, I don't know what the pleasure of the board is, but I'd like to make a motion that we approve $149,441.47 payment towards project name Cromeset Park and Oakdale Soares, contract number 2, CWSRF number 3022, change order number 2.
You want to give us that figure again? Would you subtract or...
It's $149,441.47.
That's minus the five,
That would be, yes.
minus the 5,990.
If somebody wants to double check my math, it's no secret my calculator doesn't always work.
For
I did.
backup, we'll just say subtract description of change, part 5, so in the water department. Do you want to resubmit? I think that would
We
be
can
the,
certainly redo the paperwork to
I think
reflect
that'll be
that.
the, I think that would be the best,
Sure.
instead of making changes on the contract you have right here.
No, because it needs to be signed by the contractor and by us,
Right.
so the totals need to reflect the actual.
Okay,
So then it's going to be delayed a week anyways, right?
Right. it'll be
Okay, then I
delayed.
withdraw my motion, and
Okay, thank you very
hopefully
much.
between now and then we can straighten this out. Thank you.
So with that, we got done with consent agenda for the change order. Anything else, Mr. Judy, since he's here? Anything else? None? Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Discussion of Westfield?
Mr. Chairman, through you to the listening audience.
One second, Mr. Chairman. We have a change order on our consent agenda. Are we tabling the consent agenda till next week? What are we doing with it?
Yeah, the change
Can we
order
just skip it?
was to redo it. He's going to redo it and send it to us next week.
All right, so no action was taken at all
No action.
on the consent
Only
agenda.
action was
this
to redo it, unless we have clarification tomorrow, and then we can go from there.
evening. Okay.
And any board members that need to attend or want to attend 8 o'clock tomorrow, you can get the lowdown.
All right, got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now back to Westfield.
Mr. Chairman, just as an update, each of the board members, through you to the listening audience, each of the board members have a letter that I drafted with Peter Sanborn from our Community and Economic Development Agency that has gone out to the 5 bidders, the last round, if you will, back in 2009, along with the additional information of the RFP and an addendum that has been addressed. And that's the report for this evening. We'll be working to put together an additional emailing to over 100 other prospective bidders in the process. The letter speaks for itself, speaks to the number of positive advantages for a project like this in town. And we sent the certified mail to the respective 5 bidders from the last round. And that's my report this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Town Administrator's report.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on leadership team update, we did go through a screening committee of review of prospective applicants and representatives of the Board of Selectmen, as well as department heads, including Mr. John Foster, who was the chair of the screening committee, Anna Miranda from the school district, Selectwoman Ellen Begley, looked at a number of prospective candidates, and we were not successful in that process. I intend to expand the process. So I sent out on Friday a re-advertisement of the town accountant's position. If anybody has the time, you can go on the Mass Municipal website and see that many, many towns are looking for town accountants, from Belmont to Acton to Northborough, across the board. So I did discuss the matter with the chair, and I'm going to put it out. Hopefully in the next 2 weeks we'll get some additional interest in it, and I want to thank the screening committee for its fine work. On item B, on last Wednesday, September 28th, we had a site review by Mr. David Clark from FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. They came out. The entire South Coast region, a lot of the town administrators and managers are looking to get the best estimates into FEMA so that we can qualify for the tremendous amount of work that was done by the Municipal Maintenance Department, over $125,000 in clearing trees, working with a power company to get lines cleared, clearing drains, making certain that we could get the town back working as quickly as we could on that Monday morning. And I want to thank the municipal maintenance crew for their fine work and all of the subcontractors that work with us. So I just want to keep the board posted. We did submit through Chief Stanley, who is the emergency operations officer for that event, all of the appropriate paperwork, and I'll be keeping you posted on that. We were one of the quickest to get that filed electronically. I want to thank Chief Stanley, as well as Lieutenant John Walczak and Kevin Walsh. Mr. Chairman, on item number C, there is another storm brewing, if I can use that terminology, on the horizon. We are not out of the woods with regards to the potential closing of the Wareham District Court. We are one of the busiest courts in the state. So I took the opportunity, after I talked with Chairman Cruz and other members of the board, to write to the Trioca, the Chief Justices, for the review of the court system with regards to the reduction in their line items at the state level. And so I just wanted you to be aware, and that was in your packet this evening. I did receive a response that you have in front of you on September 27th from Robert A. Mulligan, Chief Justice for the Administration and Management, for it 4 days after that, indicating that this is a very difficult task. It's hard to look at all of the courts in the entire state to find which courts are least used and which courts can be combined or consolidated. But let me say this to you. After I crunched the numbers and went back over a 3-year span, we are up 38% for domestic violence in the Wareham District Court. And that causes me great alarm. That's just one area of statistic that shows that we need to not only keep the Wareham District Court open, but improve some of our court remanded programs to be able to assist families that are in need. And that's just one area of concern. My letter speaks for itself, and I will place on file the letter back from Chief Justice Mulligan for anybody that's interested. Mr. Chairman, I also wanted to, several weeks back, I introduced a new program called Economic Development Action Plans. And what that entails is it entails members of this board and other department heads working hard with business and industry to bring or expand businesses in Wareham, to bring jobs, and hopefully a more vibrant and diverse commercial industrial base. So I listed 2 companies. I just want to briefly mention them to you. Tractor Supply, which is going to backfill in the old Staples building, is now full. They're a nationally renowned company. They received an expedited permitting through our planning department and our planning board. I want to thank the members of those boards for members of that board for their help. And they'll bring a very different but I think important element to Cranberry Highway and that complex. I also wanted to mention that the Hawthorne Kidney Center will be backfilling in space on Cranberry Plaza, suite number 10. Many individuals have to seek out this type of medical assistance and may have to take a train or other transportation to Boston or other places. We will now have in our town a renowned kidney center, which will be once again located at Cranberry Plaza, suite number 10. The last item I wanted to mention, and it speaks to Chairman Cruz's 2+2 program working with the school district. I was not able to, but Derek Sullivan, a financial analyst for the town, attended a web seminar with Anna Miranda in the school department that brought us more information on the new municipal health care law that was passed by the legislature. And I'll be keeping you posted on that process as we go forward. The last 2 areas I'd just like to talk about before I get the status report is that I've asked Ginger Hastings, I've asked her to come, and we finally got her, I believe, to come on the 11th to give us an update on how is our health system working in town. There are consultants from Group Benefit Solutions, and hopefully she'll be able to join us either on the 11th or the 18th for a discussion about the health plans that we have in place for town employees. And lastly, Mr. Chairman, we have had on site and through the week James Powers and members of his team, Craig Peacock, working to close out work on the fiscal 2010 and 2011 audit. And it is my goal to bring to you hopefully a date coming up that we can convene jointly with the Finance Committee to receive those findings once that financial audit work is completed. On status report of ongoing projects and issues, once again, we are still working on, have completed a number of crosswalks around town. I hope people saw them and can enjoy them as a matter of public safety. And once again, I cited an example of cooperation with the school committee, working with you, Mr. Chairman, on a number of programs. That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Clerk?
Question?
Oh, question.
Thank you. Mr. Andrews, through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Andrews. You know, I know that you were working on this tractor supply company and trying to get an expedited permitting process and everything else. Mark, what happened to slow that down and we have a Halloween store in there? This guy was trying to get in there. I think the color match, his decor match with the Staples colors and all that. Was it because of planning? Was it because the owner changed his mind to rent or lease to the tractor people? How did we end up with a Halloween store till the end of October? I understand Halloween is on October 31st. But how did they get in ahead of this guy?
It's an excellent question, and as I testified to the planning board, and Director Burke was there as well, this is a seasonal business. They know when they can provide their products, Mr. Clerk, to all of their customers, and they needed to get an expedited permit process, which we put in place. I believe they're going to start work very shortly, because you either get in by a certain fall date, I'm not sure the exact date, or a spring date, and obviously we were trying to get them in to that space, because otherwise, as you know, Mr. Clerk and Steve, you've worked with me on this, we're granting abatements for empty space, or we're not receiving the proper bang for our dollar from an economic development standpoint. I do know the planning board moved on this. I think it took them a couple meetings. I'm not sure if that was one meeting too much, and I don't want to speculate. But I will send an email out, because I do know that they're coming, and they're a nationally renowned company that we
Right.
can use. They add
They
a little different flair to the town. I mean, it's a very interesting company.
I just thought I was going to see that open and not a picture of a pumpkin. And my second question, real quick, is, you know, last year, November, we approved, and I was very excited about it, was the whole virtualization thing of computers. The chief has done his. He came in under budget. I think we got about $400,000 out there for this project. Can you give us an update on that, Mark?
Sure, Mr.
And
Chair.
maybe not only an update today, but maybe we could throw that up under ongoing, if you wouldn't mind, just so we can keep the folks abreast of where we're at, how much money we're going to be under budget, because I know you're going to be under on this, and where we're at on it.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to do that. The virtualization project, as you know, was approved as a capital planning, part of a $750,000 outlay that we put in place. It is to get, you know, when you send around a memorandum to employees asking them to turn their computers off to save electricity, and they say back to you that they're not able to do that because they're not sure the computer is going to stay on for the next morning, or be able to come on for the next morning, we've had issues. But, you know, this project has uncovered a number of other key elements. In the middle of Hurricane Irene, we found out that the generator at the police station was woefully inadequate. And subsequently in this virtualization project, because we did put in place a $200,000 communication system for dispatchers, that the electrical system is that much more woefully incomplete and has not been upgraded in many, many years. So there are some challenges on this project. I believe that when we get to the end of the project's completion, we'll find employees that are better fitted with the tools to do their jobs in town. And we'll also found that we've had to upgrade, not part of the project, by the way, the electrical demand, both at the police station and the town hall. And I'm happy to keep you posted.
Mr. Holmes?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Begley?
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. Mr. Andrews, just to clarify, with Tractor Supply, was it because they couldn't get in by a certain date in order to capture the autumn season that they decided to kind of wait until the spring? Was that the delay?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I know the timeline was very tight, and as you know, I write these reports a week in advance. So I will check the correspondence that I have, but it was clearly outlined to the planning board that I think has to play a more direct role, if you will, in helping us get permits or site plan reviews done, because it was, as Selectman Holmes indicated, a very good fit. Even the color scheme matched. So I'll have to find out the answer to that question. I still have them on my radar screen as bringing 15 jobs to town, and the question was, their business plan fits on a seasonal basis, and I'm not sure if they missed that window of opportunity, but if they did, I'll be working hard to make sure that we don't have that happen in the future.
But they're still planning on coming.
That's my understanding.
Okay. Just to clarify that, but there's one other thing that you mentioned, painting crosswalks, which kind of, I noticed that the handicap spots in town, like I think there's supposed to be 2 in Onset down at Dudley Brown, and there's probably at least 6 out here. But I believe the regulations changed, and it's not just painting on the surface, because that gets covered by debris or wears off and that kind of thing. And I believe that the regulations, I could be mistaken absolutely, but it's a signage. It has to be a vertical sign. And I don't believe that those are clearly marked, because I know at first I was kind of upset that I thought someone was parking in a handicap spot closer to Town Hall, but that's no longer a designated handicap spot. Is that correct?
You are
They're
correct.
on this side. They're
You are-
closer to the
yes.
multi-service center. So I believe that there's 2, 4, 6, and there's only 1 sign over here,
Okay.
and then there's no signs erected between the spots. And there's certainly a great need for the multi-service center, because not only did I see all 6 spaces filled with people with appropriate placards, but the space that has the lines for like a handicap van that may need side access, someone parked there as well with a handicap placard. So that was a 7th vehicle.
Okay.
So I know that I believe is Mr. Burke, is he kind of the code enforcement officer for the ADA?
Yes, yes.
I wonder if he could just take a look around town at the various handicap areas and make sure that it has appropriate signage. And I don't know how it's determined out here, but the other issue that I noticed is the handicap spots for Town Hall are now in the back. For all those that may not know that,
That's correct.
that's why those spaces are gone from this door, because there's no handicap access. But there has to be 2 forms of egress. So I don't know if the door by inspectional services and the door with the ramp at the Town Hall cafeteria are handicap doors. Do they have the automatic door opener?
I do know that I believe inspectional services side does.
The one in the cafeteria does not.
Okay.
But I just wonder if he may be able to work with Mr. Newman, perhaps, or the Commission on Disability,
Sure thing.
because I happen to notice that all the spaces were filled over here, and there's not necessarily, people may not know
Sure.
if that they're not, they're either A, no longer handicap spots like closer to Town Hall, or B, which ones on this side are.
Okay.
Thanks, I'd appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Mr. Snyder?
Just a quick comment. I think that you raised very good points, Selectman Begley, particularly since last year during a snowstorm. My wife inadvertently parked in one of those spaces with the lines next to it because the lines were covered by the snow, and inadvertently blocked in someone that needed to access the vehicle. So I think had there been more clear signage, it would certainly be beneficial, particularly in those snowstorms. Yeah, I remember it well, too.
Yes, I know. I was there.
All set, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Town administrator report? If not, Mr. Clerk?
Okay, moving right along. Town business. Town business. First, right of first refusal, Bay Point Country Club. Mark?
Good evening. Did you want to read something into the record, or?
Just
Speak right
state your name.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Mark Harriman from Digital Credit Union. Did you want to read that into the letter into the record, or did you just want to make a brief presentation?
Just make a...
Oh, sure. Thank you. As you know, Digital Credit Union has foreclosed on the property known as Bay Point Country Club back in June. And I'm pleased to report tonight that we've entered into an agreement to sell. We're pleased to come to you tonight and notify the board that we have entered into an agreement to sell Bay Point. As you know, the town has a right of first refusal on that land, and there is that right of first refusal is 60 days. We have provided you with the terms of the agreement, the letter of intent agreement that we have signed, and we are here tonight to ask you to waive that 60-day right of first refusal so that we can get the property into the developer's hands as soon as possible.
Winslow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are you asking us to waive these rights tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other question? We'll go right down. Okay, are you finished or not?
No, can I just respond to that? There's so many different aspects involved in this. We have the CETA board, and I wouldn't be comfortable after a 45-second presentation just,
Yes.
I just want you to understand that. I'm not saying I'm opposed to it, but I was going to request that Mr. Chair put this on the agenda for next week with a discussion with CETA and Town Council. And as you may know, there's an article on town meeting warrant about this also. So, although I don't think it was supported by the Finance Committee or the Board of Selectmen, but there's a lot to it. I agree with you that it's a good thing that there's somebody who's interested in buying it, but
This isn't a case of us trying to move very, very quickly without the board review. The way it was done the last time, I believe, last time it was transferred, it was brought to a meeting, reviewed, and then signed off on. So we were mirroring what was done the last time here.
okay. Well, thank you. Myself, I want to make sure that I have all the information. We've talked to all the relevant parties. We do have 60 days, although I'm not suggesting we need to take those 60 days. But I do think that this board needs to do its due diligence and ensure that we've covered all our bases.
Mr. Snyder?
Well, I'm excited to see that we have an interested party. I also have some concerns. When you, through you, Mr. Chair, Mark, when you're talking about selling Bay Point, I understand you're talking about the golf course proper.
Correct.
You're not talking about the pavilion. You're not
No,
talking
we are.
about-
It is the entire
the
package.
pavilion is on the other side. You're not talking about the clubhouse or any of that. That's part of the CETA land.
Well, no, naturally, we can't sell the CETA land.
cannot.
No,
That's
what
correct.
we're saying is we are selling what is known as the Bay Point Country Club, and with that would be the transfer of the lease with CETA. We do have an application, a letter in front of CETA, and they are required to have 30 days notice of the transfer of that lease. And so that's what we're doing. We may be talking just some technical terms here, but naturally we wouldn't be
Right.
selling town land.
And just to clarify, and I agree that we need some time to at least review with council, but you refer to the buyer as the developer. Is there a reason for that?
No, he is an investor who also does development and so forth.
So we're back to the development issue at the golf course again.
No. May I
Please.
interject? No, we are selling this to someone who wants to buy a golf course. There is no. I can't speak for
You
him.
used the word, I did.
No, you are correct, and I misspoke.
That's a very scary word. Developer there.
I can't speak for the buyer. I know of no plans.
Thank you.
Mr. Baker?
We certainly got a lot of paperwork from you regarding this. I do agree with my colleagues that this board should probably hear from the pertinent other boards. It would be the respectful thing to do. And my question would be, because I certainly don't know the answer, you said a letter went to the CETA board?
Correct.
When is the next meeting for the CETA board? Jean?
Do we have a date for the next?
Last night? Okay.
When was it?
Last night. Mr. Chair,
When is
could,
the next one?
No, Mr. Chair, could you ask if they discussed the letter? Could she come forward just to?
Would you mind stepping forward? Thank you. Yeah, we were under the impression that they hadn't received it yet or talked about it yet, but she'll clear us up.
As is I, Mr. Chairman.
But they could only receive and talk about the parking lot and those acres that are involved with Cedar, not the golf course.
Yes, we did receive the letter, I think it was on Monday. We did distribute it at our meeting, and we did have a discussion. We didn't take a vote because it was something that had just come before us on Monday. We are having our attorney look at it. It's separate from the right of first refusal. This is an extension of a lease, and the way the lease was written, it would succeed or continue with the next owner if we agree to that. And that may be the case, as long as they agree to the terms that we have in the lease. And I'm trying to think, there was one question that I had that we're going to look at, and it was who, in the past, the mortgagee, DCU, agreed to pay the lease if the mortgagee defaulted, and that has occurred, and you have responded. So we're going to be checking on that to look at that avenue. But it's separate, as I understand it, from your discussion of the right of first refusal, because you're talking about the golf course itself, not about the Cedar land or the pro shop.
Correct.
Does that answer
That's
the question?
correct.
Any questions, Mr. Begley?
I understand how your decision is separate from our waiving our right to first refusal, but if we waive our right to first refusal and they proceed with the sale, then wouldn't they need to have an approval of the lease and the pro shop from you?
Correct.
So it's not really separate? We're kind of like the stopgap. Even if you approve it, we still have to waive the right to first refusal. So, do you understand what I'm saying? So it's kind of chicken and egg.
It is.
Right. When do you meet again?
November 1st.
Oh, dear.
Yes, Mr. Holmes?
Actually, it doesn't have to be tied together. If the new owner decided to use the pavilion as the pro shop and use the old access road, they don't need Cedar's land at all, for the most part. They could work right around that. Now, if they're talking about development, obviously they need that land. But if it's just a golf course, they may not need the Cedar land at all.
Well, I'm sorry.
For,
So it
for
could be
whatever
separate.
reason, they have opted to use it for a number of years, and it
Right, but this is
apparently
a new
good
owner.
option for them.
It's
Correct.
a new owner. So they're
But
not
they
tied
have made
together.
the request, Steve, so
Yeah.
we're considering that.
Mr. Snyder?
Mr. Chairman, sir, I wonder, as maybe as part of an inducement to have us entertain signing off on this before the 60-day period, if you would be kind enough to maybe provide us with a management plan for the project, for the property, so we can have a.
Excuse me, Mr. Selectman, are you meaning my previous management plan of what we've done since the foreclosure, or what?
Management plan of the developer who will be purchasing the property.
Mhm.
Would that be something that we could look at as the Board of Selectmen?
I'm under I'll tell you up front, I'm under a confidentiality agreement with the letter of intent.
Mhm.
But I'll also state that I have not seen any plan. So
Okay.
I don't specifically know of a plan.
Mr.
But I will say there are, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, there are a number of hurdles that must be met here, and, the terms of the land lease must be adhered to and so forth. So, we are trying to move that along, and naturally any buyer would adhere to what is on record with the agreements.
Mrs. Begley? Sorry, Mrs. Winslow.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, is it possible for us, Mrs. Connaughton, is it possible for Cedar to meet before the first week?
Yes, I was going to mention that. course we could.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to unnecessarily delay. I mean, I realize that, your goal is to get the property sold. But I would like to have kind of maybe a longer conversation at the beginning of the agenda, and I would personally like for town council to review this document and give us a written opinion. Mrs. Connaughton and Mrs. Begley are right in that the lease of the land is separate from the right of first refusal, except it's all the same land. So, no, well, you're right. It's
not the same land.
well, no,
It's two totally separate parcels of land.
they're two totally separate parcels, right? But if let's say, for example, we were to exercise this right of first refusal, right? And we say, nope, DCU, the town's gonna take that land.
Right.
That has an impact on the land that CETA has. Am I wrong?
Yeah, no, you're not.
Well,
Because-
she could lease it to the town?
Not really.
It really doesn't have any, it's two separate pieces of land.
Well, but it does, because right now the lease brings in money to the CETA, and the town's certainly not going to pay to lease the land when CETA is part of the town. So I guess what I'm saying is that while I realize it's a small piece of it, I still think it's a piece of it. So I would like to hear the CETA board's vote on, whatever it is that's being discussed in terms of that, although that's not a deal, it's not a deal breaker. But the most important thing is that I really would like town council to take a look at this and just give us an opinion. I mean, I think in the past we've always just, waived the right, but I would like a little more information personally. Mrs. Begley-Scudder.
Yes. I understand your caution, Mrs. Winslow, but I'm not sure. This was a privately owned golf course that was foreclosed, and DCU is now the owner of this golf course, and they have a buyer. So I'm not sure that we would necessarily get involved. I'm not sure how council's opinion would be of any benefit to this board, because it's not whether or not we approve the sale. It's whether or not we want to be golf course owners. We're waiving the right of first refusal. So I'm not sure how a council's opinion would benefit us. I'm more concerned about CETA's opinion on the land that's going to be leased in kind of a timely way. And if they met in a timely way and could come back to this board, and then just my opinion, I'm more concerned with what CETA's planning on doing, although at the same time I agree with Mr. Holmes that although they're related, they're somewhat unrelated. Are you looking at the 18th, 2 weeks from tonight?
Mrs. Connaughton?
Just to comment, the way I understand that and I've read the lease, essentially, we have agreed to continue with the new owner, providing they agree to the terms of the lease. So I can't see that we will be turning them down. That was my only question. As long as whoever the mortgagee is will agree to that same stipulation, then I can't see that we would not agree to lease the land again.
As you saw in the letter, we will be the mortgagee again.
I didn't see that.
Okay, we will be the mortgagee again, and we will continue on with the exact same agreement that we had before. That's what we had anticipated.
So once we have that information, we can hold a short meeting, make a decision, and get back to you even probably by next week.
Mr.
Yeah, if we're looking to put it on for the next meeting, it would be nice. Mr. Snyder, go ahead.
Just a question for clarification. I understand that we're saying that this is just a golf course, but my understanding is that there are other development rights related to this land. Am I mistaken in that?
That's why I wanted town council to take a look at the situation.
Well, I believe that there are rights available, but they are all subject to approval.
Right.
So nothing can be done without any sort of town approval.
Right,
But what we're doing is we're passing on those rights,
right,
much like we're passing on the lease.
I understand.
Yeah.
right.
So is it possible, Mrs. Connaughton, for you to get back to us before next week's meeting?
that would be, I think that that would be, I'm probably sure that I could get a quorum for next Monday afternoon. So
Okay,
I
and
could
then
give
if you do that,
Oh, you need it even sooner if you're going to post a meeting?
well, we can
notice.
post a meeting and put that on it.
I mean, if you need to put it on the
Yeah,
agenda.
we can put it on the agenda, and then we can decide next Tuesday if you have that information, which you should have. In the meantime, we'll have council look at what we need to look at to ease everybody else's mind. So the quicker we resolve it, the better it is, I think, on the town's part. So,
But,
and
Mr. Chairman, I understand the concerns of the board. We have, a new, someone else new coming into the town. But as far as operation of law, do you really need much more input from your town council when it's really, as Mrs. Begley said, it's, do you want to buy a golf course for $1.7 million or do you not? And that's really what we're asking.
Right.
So, but
Mr. Holmes.
And Mr. Chair, hey, believe it or not, we have something in this town called town meeting. It's been said by this current board, as a matter of fact, several times, that it really doesn't matter what we vote or what the Finance Committee votes. It's what the taxpayers vote. We have an article on the agenda for the 24th for the town to see if they're willing to purchase a golf course. So yeah, I don't really think at this point, listen, right of first refusal documents, Rich and his people can look at that in 10 minutes. It's free. It don't cost us anything to do that. But more importantly to the point of this question is, has the town of Wareham decided not to get into the golf business? That's the question that's being asked of the Board of Selectmen tonight. And there's never been a conversation.
Oh, go ahead.
Mr. Holmes, I agree with your somewhat of your proposition there. However, we're asking you to get into the golf business at $1.7 million, not at $1.4 million.
Well, that's fine, but that's not up to us. That's up to the town.
Well, it's true, but wouldn't the letter of intent and the agreement I have with my buyer, wouldn't that supersede $1.4 million because you haven't met the hurdle?
Well, you have.
Of what the
Well,
price is?
no, I don't think so. Because at town meeting, things can be edited. Things can be amended. The discussion, I think, and I understand. Listen, you give us 60 days in the right of first refusal letter, dated. I don't know what's the date on this thing. The 28th. I mean, we're 6 days later, and you're pressuring for a signature on the 4th. Well, today's the 4th, right? Yeah. So we have a meeting in 20 days. This is for 60 days. I mean, listen, there's a good chance the town would say, hey, we're not interested in the golf course. But it's not up to this board or the Finance Committee that voted. I didn't even get to vote. But it's up to town meeting whether they're interested in that or not.
Well, Mr. Holmes, I would also say you used the word pressure. DCU is not pressuring anybody. We're merely bringing it up to you and asking that that this be done only by virtue of the fact that it's been done before. So we're not asking the board to set precedents.
That's all I'm saying is that I don't think, Mike, this discussion's ever taken place, so I don't know. We've asked for it to take place, and now this came up. So I'm in favor of kind of putting it off and see what happens.
Mr. Snyder, Mrs. Winslow.
Mr. Chair, I do think that, considering the fact that it's on town meeting warrant, it is important that we fully vet this whole issue. Bay Point has a long, complicated history. And what seems like a simple matter of waiving a right of first refusal is, I want to make sure that we cover all our bases and I realize what you're saying. I'm not trying to hold you up. I understand you're in the business of, unloading the real estate, and kudos to you for actively marketing it and finding a buyer so quickly in this economy, and I want to support that. But my duty is to the citizens and the taxpayers of this community. So I hope that you can understand that.
Oh, I can.
And know that nobody up here wants to delay what you're trying to do. But at the same time, I think that we all feel that we need to really step back and look at things and not make decisions in haste, because that ends up causing problems for all of us in the long run. So, and I do think that we have tried really hard to work with you with the liquor licenses and all the other things to try and, you know, make the transition as smoothly as possible. So I hope you can understand that.
Oh, I would agree, Mrs. Winslow. I'm not stating otherwise, but other things were stated here, and I just want to make sure that we have our position clear out here.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, to move this forward, what we do to what we had said earlier. We'll have the CETA board have their meeting, get back with us as soon as they can. We'll set up the agenda for next week. We can discuss it, or we don't have to discuss it. The attorneys will look at it, and they can answer us on both facets, whether we need to wait until after. And if we have to wait till after, right after town meeting, we can schedule it again. So, did I make myself clear or no? We're going to have
I think
two
so.
meetings.
As far as we're concerned, you're anxious for us to hold a meeting and take a vote on the lease,
Right,
which we will do.
and then we'll get back with council, and they'll get up with us, and next week we can talk about whatever council came up with. And if we need to wait until after town meeting, then we will. If he says no, we don't, we don't.
Great.
Okay?
One last comment. I guess the only thing that, if you are going to have right of first refusal and refuse to buy, the essential piece of that is to make sure that that's in the agreement moving forward, so you have the opportunity next time. Yes.
Well, that right is actually it's in the deed.
Right.
Yeah. So that's not contemplated being changed.
And if
It's
this
been
goes
lost
back
before.
out, we're still back in first of line.
I read that the previous deed restrictions, right of first refusal, were continuing,
Correct.
as is the lease agreement. That language is continuing going forward.
And that's on record at the registry.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, because
Mr. Holt.
you also have a discussion here with DCU, and I wasn't going to mention this, but since Ms. Winslow just did, several weeks ago, probably 7 now, this board issued a liquor license to the pro shop.
Correct.
What happened? Never opened?
Oh, actually,
There's been no activity there?
it is still with the ABCC. I got a voicemail from the Department of Revenue last week saying that they had cleared it and they were sending it back to the ABCC.
Okay.
And I got questions last Friday
I'm
from
sure you have.
from the ABCC. They just want some additional information. So it continues in process. As you know, it does take some time.
And the only reason I ask you that is because if we issue a license, people expect that license to be honored in hours of business open, and they expect that to happen, and it hasn't happened, and I hadn't heard anything through the board here as to why. So, since Ms. Winslow mentioned it, so you think...
Yep. It's still with the ABCC for
Okay.
approval. I don't see any impediments to approval. We just have to go make sure we go through the process.
Because we had an issue with another establishment in town. Was it Wickets? Wickets. In Onset. Right, because she hadn't paid some taxes, and the state grabbed the license, and we had a lot of problems. So we're close to finalizing that, right, Mark?
From all that I know, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions with ECU? Town Administrator, you have any?
Very good.
Thank you very much.
you.
Any other town business? Start with, on the left-hand side, Mrs. Winslow,
Mr. Chair, no, not tonight.
Mr. Snyder,
No, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bagley.
Mr. Cruz, I don't know when to bring this up. There's a couple issues regarding the bike path. I don't know if there's any other town business or liaison reports, but I think it would fit in either one. And there's a few things actually. There were some requests because I'm liaison to bike path. They had a special meeting, and Mr. Andrews will be receiving a letter from the chair of the bike path committee. The Wareham Bike Path Committee endorses the directive of the Wareham Board of Selectmen that you contact Eagle Holt Company on behalf of the committee, because the committee seeks approval from Eagle Holt for a right-of-way for the bike path to cross their properties. and I believe this will be going to Mr. Andrews. The other, we had already voted on that, but this is a formal letter from the Bike Path Committee. I beg your pardon. The other thing is, the Bike Path, Mr. Smith had met with the Board of Selectmen of Carver. Remember, he came before this board and said that they were all excited. They were happy to have the Wareham Bike Path go through Carver, go from Wareham through Carver. But what might be helpful is if the board and I was asked to ask the Board of Selectmen and Mark if we would write a letter to Adam Rikia. I can give you this note, Mark, at Serpent, letting this gentleman know that the town of Wareham supports Serpent plans to build a bike path connecting Wareham's bike path following Route 58 through Carver into Miles Standish State Forest. And then one other thing. There were 3 things, and I was glad I wrote them down. I need to ask Mr. Andrews if he's contacted the town's attorney, because Wesson and Sampson had done a feasibility study on the bike path, and there has been some discussion on the Bike Path Committee whether or not they fulfilled their agreement. So I believe the town possesses the contract for Weston and Sampson. So if council could look at that contract, we'd appreciate that. And they were supposed to determine who the abutters were and who owned the land. So there were a few things that some on the bike path believe were not fulfilled by this feasibility study. So was that too rambling, or did you get what I was saying?
No, Mr. Chairman, I have this. Chairman Cruz and I met with the members of the Bike Path Committee, and subsequently an issue relative to the engineering contract that the Bike Path Committee had with Wesson and Sampson came up. Town Council is in possession of that agreement. Town Council is looking at that agreement. I'm not sure what the remediation would be, except to say, if you don't get it done right the first time, you might want to get it done right the second time. So there were property areas or parts of the properties that, through my understanding, were not appropriately identified, and we need to correct that, find some way to correct that.
Well, my question is this, Mr. Cruz and Mr. Andrews. Do you think it would be helpful to have, I know that, we're going to have our agendas filled chock full from now until the end of the year, but to have a meeting with this particular, Weston and Sampson, the Bike Path Committee, and this board, just to see, even if it was a workshop, but that might be something going forward. But right now, in the meantime, it would be helpful to have council looking at the contract to see. And it seems like there's some sort of communication issue going on around here. But
Okay, if I could respond, Mr. Chairman. Adam Reckier from Serpent is coming to the leadership team tomorrow at 10. We're hopeful to get Adam's input. I think the phrase I used is, how do you build a successful bike path? Something happened with regards to the contract. I'm not sure what it was myself, but council is looking at it, and Adam had agreed to come the next available Wednesday that he could come is tomorrow. So we hope to have his input there. And I did ask, I just want to make sure on record that the committee itself took a vote to endorse the action that they were asking me to take.
Right.
Because I wouldn't want a member or two or whoever to say, geez, we don't remember saying anything about this, because I know how much the committees are important, particularly at the Bike Path Committee level, and they've been, as you know, toiling for a long time to try to get this project off the ground.
just for this board's edification and the listening audience, there's a few people that have been working very, very hard, and this is something that not only our community is going to enjoy, but we're connecting with other communities. And this has taken extraordinary effort by a few people, and this costs a lot of money and time to make this be a successful program. So for those that are out there that enjoy bike paths in other communities, I know I've enjoyed the one in Falmouth. Anyone that's interested, please just even attend some of these bike path committees, because I'm sure they would welcome any sort of assistance with open arms.
Do you want to give a time and a date for your meetings?
I don't remember.
But anyways, I think tomorrow...
I go to
we're
a million
having-
meetings a week.
Tomorrow at the Leadership Committee, I think we already had it scheduled. And the people with the Backpack Committee, they have been very diligent in what they're doing because since we talked to them a couple weeks ago, they've been in the office, I know, every week. And they're giving us more and more information. So we're hoping with the meeting we have with Serpent and them tomorrow, we can straighten a lot of it out.
When's the next meeting, Dave? See, he didn't know either. Third Wednesday at 6 o'clock. And, Mr. Cruz, you had promised them that they would be on the first Tuesday of the month, every month, until some of this was straightened out. And they reminded me that...
I'm glad someone's reminded me.
They reminded me of that last night and said, why aren't we on the agenda? So I told them that I would remind you.
Thank you. You have it? There you go. I need reminders.
Yeah, just one thing. Late this afternoon, and I would ask Mr. Andrews tomorrow morning maybe to send this out to the various chairmans, commissions, boards, selectmen. Lo and behold, next Tuesday, no, next Tuesday's not the 18th.
The 11th. The 11th.
Next,
The 11th.
Susan, Representative Gifford sent us a note this afternoon. Lo and behold, the state they are filing a bill to revamp 40B to include, especially in Wareham's interest, mobile homes and parks. There's a huge meeting and hearing coming up. And it seems neither one of us. I printed it out. I know I printed it. I just didn't bring it. We believe it's on October 18th. Mr. Could you just get that out tomorrow to everybody so
Yes.
anybody who's interested, maybe people would like to carpool up to Boston. It's a very important hearing, especially for this town. And I know that we've all screamed that there's no action taking place, and we finally got at least the breath of an action taking place. So if we could spread the word, she was coming tonight, but she was away at some other event. So
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I believe it's on the 11th, if I took through you, Mr. Chairman, to the board and listening audience. It is a comprehensive review of Chapter 40B and other types of housing programs. That will be held in Gardner Auditorium beginning at 10 o'clock. Sign-in for the general public starts at 9:45. I sent the board an email with that regard late this afternoon. I intend to be there, so if anybody wants to join me, that's fine. And I know Representative Gifford has pieces of legislation that have been filed in the past that will be taken up that day for initial review, and I have communicated with her office. I'll make sure the board gets a full packet first thing tomorrow morning.
yeah, I'm thinking off the top of my head, I know that some of the Westfield folks would love to probably try to attend that. They have a great interest in the 40B stuff, and as many other committees do as well. So if we can get a large group, anybody can make it during the day, obviously, to support that effort. I think it would be a good thing. Thank you.
Any other? If not, we'll move on to sewer. We have anything on sewer? Mr.
Just
Baker?
one thing, Mr. Cruz, I had a letter that did other people receive it, other members of this board? This is our second request for a hearing in regard to a problem with our sewer bill. It's been going on for 3 years. Did everyone receive this?
Mr. Chair, I believe that is the same homeowner that the office recently sent the abatement request back to Mr. Campina, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, yeah, I think both notices we received this week are in Mr. Campina's hands.
I think
Want him to come
I think
forward?
we
So
all
he's on it.
I think we all got it,
Mhm.
but and I'd have to double check because I just saw it tonight. But I'm pretty sure that that's the email that went to Mr. Campina last week about the abatement request.
Would you like Mr. Campina to step forward, please? Thank you.
I don't think it gave the address, just the name. It's the one where when we talked about, and perhaps the board should, Mr. Cruz, revisit the policy But currently, the policy as it stands is that you have to have the water shut off for a period of 6 months before you qualify for an abatement, but that abatement is not retroactive. And, right, it goes forward. And in addition to that, if you recall the gentleman who had inherited the cottages and they had no water, but he didn't know his mom was paying the sewer bill, we can also only abate up to one prior fiscal year back. And that has something to do with the law. So I'm pretty sure, and I want to double check, but I'm pretty sure this is the same situation that Mrs. Wilson emailed Mr. Campina about last week. However, I could be wrong, but I think we should double check. And if it's not, then it should go on the agenda, and if it is, then it's in Mr. Campina's hands.
Okay, now the first issue you're talking about is the individual on the house, right? The individual owned the house. That's the first one you were talking about right now. I think Mr. Campina knows about it.
Mrs. Kennedy.
What is it? Walters? Was it
Mrs. Walters, I believe it was, on Candy Lane.
Right.
She sat in front of, we've presented this back in the, I would say, the winter. And at the time, it was addressed in the winter. And we sent her a letter saying that the abatement was denied. And so she's reapplying. And so I think some policy has to be that we've already answered it and nothing's changed. So I don't believe it should be entertained. A letter should be reissued that we've already addressed it and go from there.
Well, I think if it's already been addressed and it hasn't been, a year? It has to be shut off?
Water has to be shut off for 1 year.
For 1 year. So if it's 1 year and neither one of them have...
Correct. And I think her concern was, again, she hadn't quite made the year. So I'm going to revisit her paperwork. She was remodeling her home, and I believe she's done remodeling it. So if she's moved in, then it's moot. There's nothing we can do for her.
Okay, so can you send a...
I'll do a follow-up letter.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, what was the other one, Mrs. Begley?
Was that Mrs. Wilson? Was that a business?
No. This is a letter that I think every member of the board from Cam D Realty, LLC.
Are they, what's the property address, ma'am?
There's no property address on this.
I think that's... Okay, that's the one we talked about, the property in Onset.
Was that the old gas station?
No,
Which one?
The laundromat.
Oh, okay. That's another issue, and yeah, we've addressed it, and we'll continue to address it.
And it's nothing that the whole board needs to address? No?
Well, I think it came before us before, and as far as we know, maybe I'll let Mr. Campina explain how they do the EDU and what he's looking for.
Well,
laundromat EDUs?
Yes.
We've had this discussion before,
right.
yes.
Yeah, we did, and I thought it was settled, but they want to come back again, and I don't think we have any recourse. I think it was settled already, so...
I think the particular item was, but I think the bigger issue was if the board was going to get involved in a workshop-type situation and address EDU, billing, and the whole 9 yards. So this is part of that big issue. There are certain businesses and residents thinking that we should readdress EDU, and I'm finding it's a big issue just saying, oh, great, let's do it. It's a big issue in that. So the board will have to be totally involved. The administration's already involved. And I think we're looking at the big picture here because there is a big picture. And so it's going to take some time to decide what direction we're going to go because it has a major impact. So we are addressing it slowly, and it's going to take a workshop, and we just have to figure out when we're going to do that for the big picture because more than just one business becomes involved. We have more than one laundromat. We have more than one type of business that is asking. We've got many abatements that I'm working through. I'll get into the board all at one time. We can do them, but we've got businesses asking for abatements because a certain particular part of their property has been vacant for a year or two, and so these are issues we're going to have to take up, and so they'll all come in front of the board, and we're weeding through them, and the ones that we don't want, we'll again, we'll write letters, and the ones that we do want to entertain, I'll bring it to the administration. They'll set up for you with Mr. Cruz, and then you guys can definitely just get totally involved and we'll make some decisions.
Great, an abatement day.
Yeah,
sound great.
it's a good abatement day. Yes, ma'am. That's
Mr. Cruz, can I ask another question about, since we were unable to attend the Walmart hearing over at the zoning, and with the zoning and planning, that was last week, correct?
Was it canceled?
I thought it was
Was it
tonight.
canceled?
Was tonight
Or is it
canceled?
tonight?
Maybe it's tonight. I know it was canceled last
I
week.
think there was
believe.
one tonight.
Is it tonight?
I believe so. I'm not sure.
Well, it's
Yes.
always on a Tuesday night, so we never get to go. And I guess I'm still really, really concerned about what Walmart may or may not ask for capacity
Well,
when we're still pretty much up in the air. And I think this board, we discussed last week that we were still up in the air, and there were supposed to be discussions with AD Makepeace and what they're requesting. So where are we on that?
I see Mr. Hall moved up his mic, so.
Mr. Chair, I will jump on the sword. I call my able comrade who's sitting at the front table. His cell phone doesn't work too well. I scrubbed my office. I couldn't find the damn report. I call Mark. I call Guy next. He doesn't think we both have the same number in our head, but that makes no sense. It's about 130 total.
130 total.
But it makes no sense without the report. And I called Mark Gifford in a final effort, and he actually has a meeting with somebody from there this week.
Thursday. I have a meeting Thursday with Mr.
If we could move that to next Tuesday, put it on our sewer agenda, I will get a copy of the physical. It makes no sense for us to talk through it because I don't remember every aspect of it. And if it makes sense, I may even ask them if they wouldn't mind coming for 10 minutes, and they could do it for us all themselves and do like a quickie, 10 or 15 minutes during our sewer meeting. Would that be all right? If they will. If they won't, we'll just bring the report.
Mr. Kane's asked me for a meeting this Thursday.
Oh, you're meeting with him,
yes,
right?
I am.
Yeah.
And it was in regards to capacity.
Yeah.
So I'll definitely address it. I'll ask him for specifics, and I'll get all the information I can. I'll give it to the board, and then.
No promises, Guy.
Jim wasn't at
Don't
our
make any
meeting,
promises.
I'm not promising anything. I'm going to request it. I can't promise I'm going to get it, but they did ask me to meet with them about capacity. So we'll definitely discuss capacity and its total, and then whatever it is, I'll report. I'll get everything I can in writing or whatever and give it to you, and we'll go from there. But I'm not making any promises.
Any other questions? Mike? Mr. Winslow?
Mr. Chair, I just want to say that I think it would be great if on a future agenda we could get the AD Makepeace Company to come do the presentation that Mr. Holmes and I and Mr. Campina have seen, because I think it would help a lot for folks in the public to really understand what this infamous sewer contract and open-ended infinite sewer is. It also will give the community a good idea of what the thought process is going forward with the BDOT. And it's a very short presentation. If I remember correctly, it was less than 10 minutes.
Very informative.
Well, that'd be good, since you have your meeting with them Thursday, you can run it all down to us. Mr. Holmes?
It might be infamous, but it's real. That contract was signed, and I think I found a copy in my basement that I'll try to bring next week as well, but I had to brush some stuff off of it. And the other person I couldn't remember last week, it came to me today, who was with us at that meeting was John Charbonneau, our planner. So it was Kara, Mark, myself, Guy, Mark Gifford, and John Charbonneau was the other guy who went there on that fact-finding mission. So our planner was with us as well.
What meeting was this?
This was a meeting that the Board of Directors, the Board of Selectmen authorized for us to go to AD Makepeace and get information and discuss capacity so that we could bring it back to this board and then work with Mr. Hogan, who made a statement one night to me here that he would be willing to sit down with us and redraw that work of the contract so that we would have at least a not-to-exceed number on gallons of capacity that we owe to Makepeace, because the original contract was for unlimited capacity, which is the issue now, is that some say, well, they could come and ask for 1 million gallons and we're going to build 6 treatment plants. Well, under the contract, that's an exaggeration, but it does say unlimited. And he said that night that he was willing to work with us and come to some number. And that's where I think we left off around 130 or so. But that's what the meeting was
Absolutely.
about.
And we had discussion about reality, too, if I remember, and he had mentioned, and they were going to be very realistic. I really, truly remember that statement from Mr. Hogan, that he would be realistic because we only have so much capacity, and he wasn't going to say to ask for more capacity than we possibly would have. We also talked in that meeting, and I really think it's important, is that we talked about building a treatment plant in that area as a joint venture. As the town expands, we're going to need a treatment plant, and they're expanding. So they were even willing to talk about that, a joint venture where we could do some type of private and public investment into a treatment plant. So there's a lot of things on the table. So I think once we get some real numbers and we have a meeting, as Ms. Winslow suggested, I think they can clarify a lot of things and put some minds at ease as far as the misconceptions that are out there. Because, again, I'm still learning, so I'd like to hear that also.
Mr. Winslow?
It's also important to note that this particular agreement only covers a portion. It's and it was shaded in on the map, and I can see it in my head, but and that's why I think it's really important for that presentation to be done here in the public so that everybody sees it, everybody understands it. Maybe we can get that document scanned and posted online so that people can read it for themselves. And I think that would also, if we could get that, and Mr. Hogan did say that night that he was willing to talk about that, if we could get that piece of it clarified, that would make going forward with Walmart a lot easier for us because we'd have a better idea of what we're really dealing in.
Okay, so we're waiting until next Tuesday, Mr. Campina, on your report, if we can have one up.
Just
Mrs. Begley?
just briefly, Mr. Cruz. There's a couple things. When did this presentation occur? Just curious.
March. I wouldn't say it was March. Beginning of March.
Okay. Okay.
End of April. No, wait a minute. It could have even been before that. Cause
No, there was
I want to say
no.
I saw some minutes. Well, wait a minute now. I saw minutes where Walmart came in like on March 21st or something. It was before that.
Right.
So it might have been January, February-ish.
There was still snow on the ground.
Yeah, it was probably
So
February.
this was when you went on a fact-finding mission in February? No.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
A year ago, under the
Last
Mrs.
winter.
Donahue and Mrs.
Gotcha.
Extra.
So. Okay. So it's like 6 months later, but that's okay. I mean, I guess my other question is this.
6 months later. What do you mean?
Well, you met with them in February, but you went back to the board after that and presented.
Oh, yes. No, we went to the board. We went
Right.
to the meeting. We came back to this board.
Right.
And we had a meeting and discussed the whole thing.
Okay.
Last week, we were asking about the capacity numbers.
Right.
I couldn't find the report.
Okay.
I was looking for the report. That's why there's a discrepancy. In, I had 110, he had 130, but I mean,
This
maybe the
this
numbers-
report is a result of the fact-finding meeting.
It's a report that was
no.
presented to the town in terms of the entire piece of Makepeace's property,
I understand.
what they have asked for in capacity, what would happen if they build out A, B, C. Here's what we would be asking for. What if we built A to Z, entire 100% build out? Here's what we would ask for. So they laid out all of any potential development in that area and gave us the number of gallons because that's what we were trying to get to, so that we could go back to Mr. Hogan and his people and say, okay, look, if you built everything, it would be 10,000 gallons. So can we go back to the agreement, the contract, and say not to exceed, give them 11,000 gallons, so that the town would be protected. We're not protected in sewer capacity in that area right
So
now.
as opposed to phasing the project and coming back to this board, they had an open, you're saying they had an open-ended agreement?
No, they don't. Well, no, they don't. They had requested, I believe, 50,000 gallons.
They have 50,000 gallons now. That's for the front parcel, and of course, the two medical buildings. Behind that, there's a piece of land, a tract of land. They had talked about many different applications. They haven't finalized any application. So we asked them, worst case scenario, suppose you put an old age development, suppose you put this, trying to get them to give us some numbers. But they don't have that, so they showed us what the future was. And as Mrs. Winslow said, they'll bring it up, put the board here, show you what they're developing, what they could develop that's in this area to be developed. And they showed us everything. And I think it's a great idea to have them in there because they're doing it. It's going to be in front of us, and you're relying on my memory from 6 months ago because I don't have notes in front of me. So I remember it was a very cordial agreement. So I think the best thing is to get them in here and have them explain to us specifically.
My concern is this, however. I'm sorry, Ms. Winslow. I wasn't finished.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My concern is this. I mean, if we don't have any hard numbers, first of all, I'd love to see the language of the contract, because does the language of the contract say that they can tie into the sewer and have whatever capacity they want, or does it just simply say they can tie into the sewer?
Nobody has a copy.
I'd like to see
Who has a copy of the
I
contract?
would like to see the contract. That's number one. And number two, the way we're discussing this, and they're going to give us a project, and this is worst case scenario, it's like they own the water treatment facility.
Again, I'll go back to the beginning. I felt that way. I made such a statement, but it's a bigger picture than that. And again, part of this was done at the town meeting. Part was done by a previous Board of Selectmen than yourselves. So, I think you should get the contract. No one has a copy. I don't know why, but nobody has a copy of the contract.
Mr.
The town should
Chair.
have a copy.
So, Mr. Campino, if we can run it down, bring it back to us and come back with more information. Mrs. Winslow?
I'd like to see a copy of the contract.
Well, that's what he's going to get.
Mrs. Begley, we were all given copies. Well, you weren't on the board at the time, but I'm sure that I still have my copy somewhere. Mr. Andrews, I'm sure, saved his copy. Mr. Charbonneau, Mr. Campino, we were all given copies of the contract at this meeting. This meeting was a result of a conversation that occurred at a Board of Selectmen's meeting, and A.D. Makepeace then extended an invitation to various town officials, selectmen, whoever wanted to come in. They have a short, I think it's 8.5-minute presentation. It consists of a nice little board that they put up here with pretty colors all over the place so that they can diagram where things are. The piece of the contract that we're talking about, the 50,000 gallons is outside of that contract, but the piece of that contract that we're talking about is a very limited piece of the BDOT. There is only certain, and they were very careful about this the day that they did that presentation. This parcel, and the way that it's situated, how it's developed is key in terms of what the usage is going to need to be. Now, if, for example, it's entirely retail, then obviously the GPD gallons per day is far lower than if they were to put an assisted living facility there. However, when you hear them go through it, it makes a lot more sense than us all trying to repeat a conversation that we had 6 months ago. The contract is not a mystery. Several people have copies of it. The language is not... It was Makepeace said that they were willing to rediscuss it. Now's probably a good time for us to rediscuss it. We have Walmart wanting sewer capacity. We don't really know if we can give them sewer capacity because we did make this agreement. Right, wrong, or indifferent, doesn't matter. Document exists and it's signed. And I think it would be really much easier for us to see that presentation and then discuss it from there. And I'm happy to look through my piles of stuff that are taking over my home and find that contract. And if Mr. Andrews has it more accessible, perhaps he could have it scanned for us. But the meeting was a result of a conversation that occurred at the Board of Selectmen. It was an invitation that was extended by Makepeace. It was not an official gathering of any sort where any type of conversation took place. It was an informational meeting. We were given a presentation.
Hold on.
What?
Mr. Chairman, if I may. First of all, I set up the meeting.
Yes, and because
I was authorized. Well, hang on a second. I was authorized. Please. I was authorized by the Board of Selectmen, at the time Mrs. Donahue was the chairman, there's another member in the audience, to set up a meeting with A.D. Makepeace. We were never invited by A.D. Makepeace. So, it makes a big difference whether we went on a fact-finding mission or whether we were invited by a commercial developer in our town to their office. That's a
Okay,
big,
you may, look,
that's a big
we're talking
difference,
about a long,
Karen.
I got an email from somebody telling me about the meeting and inviting me to the meeting. Whether that came from you or them, I have no idea.
That came through
I didn't set up the
Mr.
meeting.
Andrews.
The meeting was a result of a conversation that occurred amongst the Board of Selectmen over this particular piece of the contractual language. Just that. That's what spawned the whole thing.
That's
Nobody had a copy of that contract at the time, and if I remember correctly, Mrs. Ekstrom was very upset because the contract was not readily available. We did get a copy of that contract. Right? Wrong? Who knows? But
I just want to clarify that
okay,
point because
and you know
we
what?
didn't
I
go
could be
on
wrong.
some trip at the request of a commercial
So we
developer.
can continue this, because what we're getting at right now, Mr. Campina is going to set up a meeting, get all the information we have, and come back to us. Right now, we're just hashing out old stuff, where he's going to come back with contracts and the whole bit, so we can alleviate this situation.
I have a meeting Thursday, 11 o'clock, and I'll get all I can. I'll request everything I can to bring back to the board, because I'd like to see the
And
contract.
then this
too.
board don't have to hear he said, she said.
That's right, it'd be
We're
fair.
going to hear it ourselves. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can Mr. Campina, you have the contract?
No. And at that meeting, we weren't given a copy of it.
Yes.
Mr. Rizzo, he has it, he's going to look it up. You don't have to ask him any question. Next week, he'll come back with it. If he doesn't have it, he'll find a way to get it. He's talking to Makepeace Thursday.
We're going to give it to us.
Thank you. Any other sewer business before Mr. Campina vacates that?
No, I'm going to go, one final thing, I'll just mention, I was out at Dale Street in Onset off of Locust Street this evening. I got a call from a resident. They're selling their home. They have a septic system, and they'd like to tie into the sewer. This is in Onset on Dale Street. And right off of Locust Street, which is Dale Street. Yes, and the problem is the elevation. We came through with the main. It goes down. It's a dirt road. It's Dale, 14 Dale Street, and they need sewer. So I got to get them sewer, because they are in that area of sewer. So according to our bylaws, they're entitled to it. So we may have to do like a grinder pump and get them up. So I'm working on that now. I'm going to talk to Mr. Gifford tomorrow, take him out there. But I want you to be aware that they've asked for it, and they're in the zone, and they should have it. And I don't know why, but there's a question of betterment. I've got to look up tomorrow if they paid a betterment. If they haven't, then we have to talk about a sewer development fee. And we also have a policy saying if they're going to do a pump station or a grinder pump or something like that, there's something about waiving the development fee. So I'm going to bring all this to the board. I'll between myself and Mr. Gifford tomorrow, and all the policies we'll bring to the board so you can make a decision. But, you know, they should get sewer because it's in that area.
So, Mr. Cruz, this board authorizes all sewer connections, correct? This board?
Correct. I have to bring it to you. I told the contractor to write something up so I can have something official to bring to the board. But and I did this meeting after our meeting today. I went and got it, and then I came back here. So they were adamant, Mr. Wing, Gary Wing, and they really want this done.
Yeah, just make sure we have all the information. and
I'm going to
everything
get everything I can, and so we can expedite it to
thank
get
you.
the sale.
No other questions? Did we do the liaison reports already? I think you had started on yours.
I started
I
it,
thought you were
but
finished.
I am sorry, Mr. Cruz. I know you wish I were, but the Board of Health meets 4 p.m. tomorrow, October 5th, Town Hall cafeteria. They haven't met for some time. I think this is Glenn Montero's first meeting, right? So they hadn't met since Dr. Gleason had resigned.
Snyder? Mr. Cruz? No. Do I hear a motion?
To adjourn?
Motion made? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
4-0-0.
Someone will let Miss Winslow know we're done.
Ronnie?
Yeah, I'm just...